quite a number of illegal drugs are actually really bad and really dangerous, and they will totally fuck you up in all kinds of ways. But I believe that the sovereignty of the adult over his or her own body and his or her own mind trumps everything else.
Sure.
And we must have the right to make our mistakes.
Yes.
You know, we already have laws in our society for punishing bad behavior. If somebody on drugs goes out and gets in somebody else's face and causes them trouble, we already have laws to deal with that. We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison and actually place us in prison.
So,
if we
such
explore
an
that
important
consciousness.
point, what you just said, that we already have laws to keep people from doing bad things.
Yes.
It's so important.
We don't, yeah.
It seems so logical. It's like so clear. If you can drink and not do anything bad, go drink.
Right.
Exactly.
If you can smoke pot and not do anything bad to your fellow human,
go smoke pot. If that's what you want to do, if that's your adult decision, that's your choice. What does liberty mean if it doesn't mean that?
well,
if it
people
doesn't mean the
will
right?
get into this ridiculous, just obey the law. Why is it such a hard time? What are you, a druggie? You need drugs to get through this life. And I always say, this is such an illogical argument, because imagine if we were on an island, we were the only people on the planet, and there was only 4 of us. There was only 4 of us, and one of us wanted to smoke pot, and we said, "No, we got to lock this guy up in a fucking cage. He's crazy." And
It's
we
nice
decided,
to reduce it to that to 4. Then you really see the
you
dynamics.
see how
yeah.
silly it is. Like,
Yeah.
what you
Ridiculous.
would just lock this guy up in a cage? You can't smoke pot. We made a law against it.
Yeah.
Like, what? And that 4 is just as ridiculous as 4 million or 400 million or what. It's just as ridiculous.
It's an extraordinary thing, and you have to consider what it's led to in our society in all kinds of ways. It's led to the creation of huge armed bureaucracies who have the right to break into our homes, smash down our doors, humiliate us in every possible way, ruin our lives with criminal records, and all because what? We're smoking some natural herb which affects our own consciousness in some way. So again, I say, if we get into the faces of others, the state may have a role to play, and it does, and it already has elaborate rules for dealing with that. But for the state to have transgressed the consciousness of free sovereign adults is a grotesque abuse of human rights. And it doesn't work. This is the other thing. If the state could turn around and say, the war on drugs has worked, we have reduced the consumption of this, that, it's not true. They haven't reduced the consumption of any drugs. The consumption of all illegal drugs has gone up and up and up and up and up. Let's take another drug, tobacco. You never got sent to jail for smoking tobacco. You never got your life ruined or your front door broken down. But some years ago, people cottoned on to the notion that tobacco actually may be making us pretty unwell if we're smoking a lot of tobacco. Seems to be a connection with lung cancer. And this information was put forward. Look what's happened with tobacco in the last 20 years. Millions and millions of adults all over the world presented with that information have taken a personal sovereign decision to stop smoking cigarettes. I took that decision when I was 38 years old. I'm 61 now. I used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And I was a journalist, cigarette hanging out the mouth, typewriter. I was a heavy smoker, but I took the decision. I came to the conclusion this is not good for my body.
Stephen King said that it was a neurotransmitter and enhancer that he suffered when he stopped smoking. Well, so many writers.
Helped him write.
Like when you were a writer, why did you smoke so much as a writer?
It helps. Yeah, it does. It definitely did. It definitely did help, as does marijuana. But the fact is that the point that I want to make is that if the state was really interested in helping us. This is how the war on drugs is presented. We're concerned about your health, so we're going to send you to prison. We're concerned about the harm this drug is doing to you, so we're going to send you to prison. What's more harmful, the harm the drug is doing or being sent to prison? It seems to me pretty obvious that the being sent to prison is a much more harmful thing that's being done. If the state was really concerned about harm, then the solution is not to criminalize people for taking drugs. The solution is to present them with very good information which they believe. Part of the problem is that the state has become to be regarded as so corrupt that any message emanating from the state about drugs is not believed anymore, completely disbelieved. So once again, we come to this issue of adult sovereignty over consciousness. and our right also to make mistakes with our own body if we do that. That's what I believe we're here on this earth to learn and to grow and to develop, and we have to have adult responsibility to do that. Always astonishes me in America, where you have the Republican Party, which is strongly in favor of individual freedoms, that it's often Republicans who are the ones who are most anti-drugs. I feel drugs is a Republican issue. I think that any true Republican should absolutely champion the right of every adult individual, if they choose to do so, to explore their own consciousness with any drugs they choose.
Yeah, there's no real parties anymore. It's just a mix mash. I mean, Obama is just as much of a Republican as any Republican that's ever been in office.
I've seen this happening.
It's weird assimilation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's just you're fucked no matter what. It's either the same person.
Basically, because really our society is being run by gigantic faceless bureaucracies now. And those are much more dangerous than anything else, because they don't even have a figurehead. They just continue, they roll on, and they run people's lives.
But the aspect of society where powers that be are trying to control people's mental territory, this is not a new thing. This has been going on for a very, very long time.
Going on for a very long time.
The newest incarnation. I mean, we had witch burnings where
exactly.
It's a very old.
Exactly. I would say that in our societies today, drug users play the same role as witches played in Europe in the 16th century.
Absolutely.
That's fundamentally what's going on. They're an internal enemy which the society can be mobilized to hate, because that's what the state does. It makes people hate and fear and suspect other people, because then they want to rely on the state for their defense and their protection. It's a game. It's a mind game, and it's been going on for a very long time. And it happens that the current victims are drug users. The word. It's interesting that language itself has been deployed in this war, so that you very rarely find the word drug separated from the word abuse. That you never find the notion of a responsible use of drugs. You find only the notion of abuse of drugs. And so it's become impossible almost to speak about drugs without incorporating this notion that there's some abuse is taking place.
Yeah, and the idea that you can actually benefit from them is an alien thought.
Completely alien, very, very much hated by our society. And yet, the research is coming through. We've had the research in the last year with psilocybin, easing anxiety of terminal cancer patients, MDMA with post-traumatic stress disorder, fantastically successful result.
And cancer, apparently. Have you seen that, where they're saying that super doses of MDMA may treat cancer?
Makes sense. All the joy and love that you feel just kills all the bad stuff.
I know. I mean, these. I believe that, Aldous Huxley called the psychedelics gratuitous graces. They're something that nature just gave us for free, a kind of grace, to allow us to experience something else. And
didn't Huxley coin the term psychedelic? He's the one who came up with it.
Quite possibly, yeah.
It was Huxley and I can't remember the other person. Man. Yeah, I think that they were trying to come up with a word. They had another word that they were going to use for it, but it sounded too unscientific.
Yeah,
so
you're right. Yeah, definitely.
Psychedelic's the perfect word. They nailed it.
They nailed it?
They nailed it, yeah.
Do you subscribe to McKenna's ideas about the stoned ape theory? You know, that theory that human beings may have actually evolved from the lower primates because of the fact that we ate mushrooms?
Yeah. I came to that idea. I'd like to say Terence McKenna, one of the great minds.
Fascinating.
What
guy.
a wonderful man.
Amazing person.
What a wonderful man. An incredible loss that we lost Terence. He was a remarkable individual, and I never met him, unfortunately. But I love listening to his voice.
Me too.
I love his voice.
I have a whole section of my iPod is all Terence McKenna lectures.
Sometimes
amazing.
We go down to Brazil sometimes to drink ayahuasca, and sometimes late in an ayahuasca session, as you're beginning to return to this reality, it's nice to play a bit of music or a little bit of voice, and sometimes we play Terence McKenna, and I just remember one line was about how psychedelics dissolve boundaries, and he says, they'll dissolve boundaries between you and your cat, even between you and your washing machine. No, he had wonderful ideas, and he very intuitively, very far ahead of his time, grasped the notion that this sudden advancement of humanity had to do with psychedelics. what it did was it broke our rigid behavior patterns that we were stuck in and unable to change, and it opened us up to new possibilities. And you see this remarkable event taking place after 50,000 years ago, definitely to do with psychedelics. Now, since that time, there's a parallel track, which is the academic work on cave art and psychedelics, which is Professor David Lewis Williams of the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. And he has absolutely taken it beyond intuition and totally proved, without any doubt whatsoever, that all of the cave art was inspired by visionary experiences on psychedelics. There's just no doubt about it at all.
How do you prove that?
You prove it by the nature of the art itself. It's rich with what are called entoptic phenomena, certain patterns, zigzags, grids, hexagons, honeycomb patterns, internested curved lines. The caves are covered in all of these. Go around to the rock canyons in Utah, you'll see the same thing. Rock art all over the world is influenced by visionary experiences. And then classically, the absolute defining characteristic is the appearance of beings or entities in the art. And those entities are typically half human and half animal. It's called a therianthrope. That's from the Greek therion, which means wild beast, and anthropos, which means man. And this is one of the definitive aspects of deep visionary experience, is encountering entities who communicate with you and who are often encountered in this half-man, half-human form. So it's interesting that work done in the 1960s with, for example, mescaline, they found that the volunteers were drawing the stuff they saw, and one of the volunteers drew a man in a business suit with the head of a fox.
Wow.
That was an entity that had come and spoken to him in the trance-like state, no different from the man with the head of a lion and the body of a human being that you find in Hollenstein Stadel Cave in Germany from 32,000 years ago.